What I want to do today, is do the review of Islam that we've been working on the West Coast for a while, and just in better understanding the role of Islam. And I want to start just by tracing the trumpets, if we could, just a real quick review of the trumpets. So who knows what the purpose of the trumpets are? What is the role of the trumpets?
Take down Rome.
To take down Rome. Perfect. And particular word I'm looking for, if you could. Take down Rome is what I wanted. So the trumpet equals what? If anybody remembers.
Judgment.
Judgment.
Or scourging instrument.
Right. And it's going to be, as David said, on Rome. So what's the distinction of the woe?
Intense punishment.
The intensity of it, yes. I'll put it in the intensity. So you have the trumpet, but then there's a woe portion of the trumpet. So first, we'll just briefly look at the first four trumpets. We see that in Daniel 11:24, mentioning a time that Rome was going to rule supremely for a time, and that was 31 BC. 360 years, the time, brings you to 321 AD. Some of these dates I'm not going to go through in detail at all. We're just going to kind of gloss over this just to get the general idea when we get up to here. So the four trumpets are to take down. David said Rome. What were the purpose of the four trumpets, the first four? Because Rome was taken down in three phases, right?
It was to take down pagan Rome, the first
Pagan
four
Rome.
trumpets.
Pagan Rome. Okay, so pagan Rome. Rome makes a Sunday law. This is Constantine. They make a Sunday law, and the judgments begin. And it's the four barbarian tribes listed down here, and that's actually the Revelation 8. Then you get to 538, and you have the papal power now. And Rome actually makes the papacy. They make a Sunday law as well. And then you see in 606 the rise of Islam. So this would be, I already gave it, the papal Rome, right? You're going to have papal Rome. And that's going to extend out through all the way through here. So you have the rise of Muhammad, Revelation 9 and 606, excuse me. 606 AD is when Muhammad goes into the cave, gets his vision, and they're the believing or taught, what have you, he gets his vision that there's one God, that's Allah, and Allah is the true God and the only God, and that they're to take out the apostate religions. So they become, as Uriah Smith says, a false religion that is to be a scourge, as somebody said, scourge, I believe, apostate church. So in 627, in this history here, you have a battle going on, a long battle going on between Rome and Persia. So I am terrible with drawing or art, really bad with art, but we'll just do some little circles. We have Arabia, we have Persia, and we have Rome. And then you're going to have Rome in its eastern, western, and we won't go into those details. But Rome and Persia are in this long battle. And you have down here Muhammad and Islam that had been in this history here had been spreading, and you're down here in Arabia, and there's a battle going on between Rome and Persia, and Muhammad sends an ambassador or someone to Khosrows to ask Khosrows to denounce his gods and to accept the one true God, and it will help you with this battle. And Khosrows rejects his offer, and then Rome conquers Persia. This becomes, and at the time, by this time, Rome is very weak, in a very weakened state. So at this time, with Persia now out of the way, this opens the way for Islam to now go towards its target of Rome. And so then you keep going through here. We're just gonna breeze through quickly. You come to the first woe, which is the end of the fifth, towards the end of the fifth trumpet. You have the 150 years, and then in 1453, Constantinople is captured. And there are several battles that take place in this history as well, all the way through. But in here, that there's a change in leadership in this history between 1449 and 1453, and it's Rome over here. In Eastern Rome, it's the leader at the time is Greek Orthodox, and he can go to Rome and ask for support to fight off the Ottoman Empire, which I kind of breezed past. Sorry, the Ottoman Empire begins in 1299, and we're in this history here now. So he can go to Rome and ask for support, but being Greek Orthodox, chose rather to lose to the Sultan than to surrender to the papacy and have to follow ecclesiastical law and rule. So you see Rome or Eastern Rome become weakened, and eventually then Constantinople is conquered by the Ottoman Empire. Then you go through this history here, and again, we won't go into a lot of details, but while the Ottoman Empire grows, it then goes also through battles back and forth and some shrinking that goes along. But you come all the way, you have the sixth trumpet that begins and goes all through here and through to Millerite history. And we're all familiar with August 11th, 1840, where the Sultan surrenders to the four great powers of Europe, which were Prussia, Russia, Britain, and France. And then we know that the seventh trumpet begins in 1844. So that was kind of fast, but if there's any questions, if I can answer them, I will. If I can't, I won't. Is everybody okay with that so far? So we understand the role of Islam. We saw the first four trumpets to take down pagan Rome. We see the role of Islam is to take down papal and then modern Rome as well. So this history here, we're going to kind of look at a little bit more up here because I drew this out a little bit, hopefully correctly, because 1840 on the Millerite line would line up with 2001. We understand that from our waymarks, would line up with 2001. So I took this, just this small section to put it to where you'd see it lines up in this area here, but then I wanted to expand it out just a little bit so that we can look at the history during the Millerite history, some of the things that took place. So does everybody follow that? Okay. Everybody's
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we understand in this history here, the 10 years prior to, you have the French Revolution. And you come, so you have a 10-year period, and we're going to look at 1979 to 89 a little bit more in a minute. So you have this 10-year period here, coming to 1798, where you have, we'll just briefly touch Josiah Litch and his understanding. If everybody remembers when Elder Parmenter, I think it was August of 2019, when they started to look into the writings of Josiah Litch at the Brazil. It was at Brazil school. Started to look at Josiah Litch and come to understand that that what Josiah Litch taught was correct, and that was that the king of the north was Turkey. Who remembers who the king of the south was?
Is it Egypt?
Egypt. And who was him?
France.
Was France, right? So we do know that the papacy receives a deadly wound. Receives a deadly wound and then dies at 1799, I believe it is. But Josiah Litch took this view of the actual history that was taking place, literal history that was taking place, Napoleon, after the deadly wound on the papacy, Napoleon wants to go to Egypt, goes on this Egyptian expedition, and his intent is in his battle with his enemy, Britain. He wants to go down, and I'm going to say this probably poorly, so forgive me, but he wants to interrupt or break off the trade relations that Britain has with India. So he's going to establish relations with Egypt and to work through and get his relations with India. He winds up in a battle with Egypt. So you have the king of the south, Egypt, goes against him. You're looking at Daniel 11:40, and then he's defeated. And then the king of the north, the Sultan, Turkey, comes and goes after Napoleon. So that's Daniel 11:40 according to Josiah Litch. We have been taught that was actually the correct application of that. So in 1802, coming over to, I don't think I have it on here. In 1802, oh, I'm drawing a blank. 1802 was when, I'm trying to remember the name of the, it's a mosque that is where, maybe somebody remembers the name of it. I'm drawing a blank on the not the one in 1979, but this is where the grandson of Muhammad is in his grave, where he's buried. And there's a battle here with the Wahhabis. I might skip that part because I'm kind of drawing a blank on the memories of it, but they go into siege on that mosque. And then they siege on that mosque, and they are actually, it's a Shia site, the most holy Shia site. Okay, so that's one battle that takes place, and that's in 1802. Then in 1811 to 1818, you have the Wahhabi Ottoman War. And that is where, and I want to specify in this history, banded out here, that Turkey, you got the Ottoman Empire, and you have the Sultan. The Pasha of Egypt is a vassal of Turkey, and Egypt has its own ideas of wanting to grow and expand and be independent from the Ottoman Empire. Okay, so the Wahhabis, we understand, and we'll look at a little bit more back down when we get back down here, but the Wahhabis are very extreme, puritanical, conservative faction of the Sunni religion. And the Sultan wants to put that faction out, and he involves the Pasha of Egypt. Pasha of Egypt sends his son, and they take out the Wahhabis at that point in time. So the Wahhabis are defeated in this battle here. Then you have the Greek War of Independence. This is all leading up to 1840. You have the Greek War of Independence, where again the Sultan asks the Pasha of Egypt to help him in this battle. Greece is wanting to be independent of the Ottoman Empire, because remember they grew and then they go through this shrinking process. So Greece is fighting for their independence. There's a battle, I think I might have it on here. A battle of, I don't think I do have, I think it's in here, 27, Battle of Navarino, I believe it is, where during this Greek independence war, where the Sultan asked the Pasha of Egypt to come and help him with this fight in exchange for, I don't remember if it said land, but he's going to reward him. And from what I understand, that reward would be Syria or territory that he would get. And so the Pasha of Egypt goes and helps in this Greek War of Independence. The three great powers at the time, there's only three at this period of time. Down here, you're going to see four. There's three of them at this time, and I think it's Britain, France, and Russia. And they actually defeat the Ottoman and Egyptian war here. Anyways, eventually, I think it's in 1932 where they're finally independent. It's kind of through a step process, they're finally independent. So Greece is independent here. But this promise that the Sultan made to the Pasha of Egypt for some territory exchange, the Sultan reneges on his deal and doesn't give him what he wants. That leads to this 10-year proxy war called the Syrian War, and it's between Egypt and Turkey. The battle takes place in two different two years, 1831 to 1833, 2 years, 1839 to 1841, with a little bit of a 6-year break in between. And this culminates in the restraint of Islam, August 11th, 1840. So that's that history there. So I put that kind of spread out down here just to see that that lines up here to 2001. But we have also seen, it was Elder Parmenter that connected these two wars here, these two Syrian wars, so 1831 to 1841, to what we see in 2011 to 2021, the 10-year Syrian proxy war, which is a war between the King of the North and the King of the South. Okay, so any questions on that history? We're going to spend the bulk of the time here. So any questions on this history up here? And it's just history, no application. Everybody, I'll assume everybody's okay. Okay, so now we'll go back down to this history. We've covered the trumpets and what they do. We understand the role of Islam to take down modern Rome. And now we've looked at Millerite history. Now we'll look at this history here. This line in particular is from Elder Tess with information streams and Wahhabism. So that's where we'll pick up on this line here. The House of Saud goes back to very early 1700s, somewhere in there. I believe it's, I don't know if I have the date here, but I think Wahhab was born in 1702. Maybe somebody remembers the dates she gave. But you had Saud, the House of Saud, the beginning, and the first dynasty, I think is what they call it, in Daira, and I'm going to be really bad on the names, but they become big in that area in Arabia. I think it was near Riyadh, if I remember right. But at this same time, then you also have Al-Wahhab, who is born not in that area where the house where Saud is, Mohammed bin Saud, and that whole dynasty begins. Wahhab one is raises up in this family, and he is actually very extreme, puritanical, conservative religion, which becomes Wahhabism. And he's so extreme that he winds up being expelled from where he lives. And Mohammed bin Saud actually says, hey, come be here with us. And they begin, and then he marries Saud's daughter, one of his daughters. And they begin this connection, this relationship between the state and then this pure religion. And that goes on well for quite a few years. And there were actually two, when you go back into the history, there were two periods. There was the first dynasty, then you would see the second dynasty, and then where we're going to pick up, and that second dynasty takes place in this history here. And we're going to pick up in 1932, where you now have what does the House of Saud begin to, what do they become in 1932? Does anybody remember? The House of Saud, what do they now become?
Arabia?
Arabia,
Yes.
the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Okay, but now Saudi Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula, what is actually there in the Arabian Peninsula that is important and significant to them? Anybody remember?
Oil.
Oil, before oil.
Medina,
Medina.
the two worship sites.
Yeah, Medina and Mecca, the two worship sites. So in order to be the guardians of these two worship sites, they need to be taking on more of this, or more extreme of this puritanical and very conservative religion, in order to be legitimate guardians of the the two most holy sites. So I've read different dates. I'm going to go by the dates that Elder Tess gave and just try to keep it simple at that. But there are US surveyors in there, and there's a land purchase and that takes place. And it's actually the US surveyors, I believe, that find the oil that is now going to make Saudi Arabia incredibly wealthy. That leads to 1945 with Franklin Roosevelt coming into an agreement, which eventually, I think at that point in time, becomes Aramco. Is that how you say that? Aramco. So they're in this relationship with the West while still trying to maintain their conservative Wahhabism. So you can see there's a bit of a conflict that's going to go on there. So they begin spreading Wahhabism to keep them to present themselves as these legitimate guardians over the two most holy sites. They begin this spread of Wahhabism. They rewrite Bibles with Wahhabism commentary. Their Wahhabism commentary would include things such as who their enemies are, identifying as Israel and the Christians. And so we come to 1979. And 1979 was, we're going to go through some of these activities. A lot of events take place in this history, this 10-year history before we come to the time at the end. So one, you have Pakistan, 78, 79. They go from being quite progressive to, I think that's when Zia comes in, and it becomes very strict Sharia law. So we know what happens when it comes to women's rights in Pakistan at that time. And that opens the way as well. We're gonna let me backtrack one more thing in 1979 before we do that. This relationship with the West, when it comes to the oil, it's causing conflict with the extreme Wahhabism, and Saudi Arabia are accused as being puppets to the West, traitors to Islam, corrupt, and then the Grand Mosque is sieged by about 600 extreme Wahhabi militants, and they go into the Grand Mosque, and the Saudi Arabia from that sees that they need to get back to remain legitimate. They need to get back to that extreme Wahhabism. Okay, so that's where they're at in 1979. So Pakistan, like I said, is fairly progressive at this, just prior to this time. Zia comes in, you have Sharia law, strict Sharia law come in. You're going to see this falling away of all the women's rights and the horrible treatment of women come on. And then also Saudi Arabia uses or begins to, is again spreading Wahhabism, extremism throughout, and they set up all these schools in Pakistan. At the same time as all that is going on, prior to 79, Afghanistan has it has a communist government, a communist friendly government, a communist government in place. And that's not, all of Afghanistan is not happy with that. But Russia, and remember, this is the period of the Cold War, before the end of the Cold War, and Russia wants their foothold in, because you've got the United States, and with Saudi Arabia, Russia wants their foothold in as well. And they're threatened, I hope I get this detail right, they're threatened by the Wahhabism and extremism that's now being taught and spread in Pakistan. They've got all these schools that are being set up. And so anyways, Russia then invades Afghanistan. So we're all familiar with the Soviet-Afghan War. So during this 10-year history, just prior to it, you have Pakistan goes strict Sharia law. Now you have the Soviet-Afghan War going on here. You also have what's going on in Iran. Anybody remember 1979 Iran?
Iranian Revolution, the Ayatollah Khomeini takes
Right.
over after the Shah.
Right. So which was friendly with the United States, and now you have the Ayatollah Khomeini come in and it's going to be strict, as you said, Shia. So Shia, whereas Pakistan is being spread Wahhabism and Sunni. So that takes place in Iran. And during this period of time, you've got, Elder Test mentions Azim, I can't remember his Yusuf Azim, Azzam. He is a Palestinian professor of Islam, and he is actually in Pakistan at this time. He then calls his friend Osama bin Laden to come join him in Pakistan, and they eventually, when it comes to this war, they come together. You have I don't want to miss any points. Building up to this, when Soviets invade Afghanistan, Pakistan is threatened. Pakistan, the United States, and Saudi Arabia are in this three-way alliance. Not Pakistan, but Saudi Arabia and the United States both supply the Mujahideen, or they supply the Afghans to fight this war against the Soviets. They both supply $8 billion, I think it is $8 billion towards this to make sure that Russia is defeated. So this battle takes place right here at the end of the Cold War, and it is noted on multiple websites. And Elder Tess, I was listening to it again this morning to make sure hopefully I say this correctly, but that leads up to this support of the Saudi Arabia, the United States, Pakistan, and I think China was one as well that supported, but the bulk of the support came from the United States, and then Saudi Arabia matched the United States to be sure that the Soviet Union was defeated. And so we saw that defeat here, and that leads up to the fall of the Soviet Union. Okay, so any questions on that so far, where we're at? I feel like I'm going through it way fast, sorry. Outside my comfort zone. Okay, so Azim and bin Laden connect, and you've got the Mujahideen in this history here being funded to fight the Soviets. And then in 1988, bin Laden forms what is referred to as the base, and that's the beginning of Al Qaeda in that history. So you have the base here in 1888, the beginning of Al Qaeda. So 1989, you come to the end of the Cold War, the deadly wound here for the USSR, and at this time comes in al-Zarqawi. Al-Zarqawi was trained in Pakistan, in those schools that were taking place in Pakistan, and he converts to radical Islam. He and bin Laden know of each other, but they're not necessarily friends, and they both have different ideas of what their goals are. But Zarqawi is converted to radical Islam. You have the Gulf War, Desert Storm, where there was one other battle I left out here, Iran-Iraq War. So if I remember this one correctly, Iraq, and this is at 1980 to 88, that Iran, with Iran is now strict Shia, Iraq is mainly Sunni, and Saddam Hussein does not want that Shia uprising happening in Iraq, because Iraq does have Shia Muslims there. He doesn't want that. So anyways, they wind up with this Iran-Iraq war. So we'll review it. We have the Soviet-Afghan war. You have Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the United States that are supporting the Afghans. You have the Iranian Revolution in 79. And you see that Saudi Arabia is being, after the Grand Mosque is under siege, that Saudi Arabia needs to start living up to their Wahhabi principles. And all of this takes place in this history here. The forming of Al Qaeda begins. You've got the end of the Cold War, 1989. Zarqawi is trained in Pakistan, converted to radical Islam. And now you have Saddam Hussein. What does Saddam Hussein do in that history? Anybody remember? After 1989, I don't remember what year it is, 1991. What does Saddam Hussein do? Anybody remember?
Is that the slant drilling of Kuwait?
Yeah, and then he goes in and invades Kuwait, attacks Kuwait. Okay, so he goes in and invades Kuwait, and bin Laden goes to the Saudi government and says that because the Saudi government is actually afraid of Saddam Hussein coming into them as well. And bin Laden goes and says, look, your country needs protection, and we have all these fighters, the Mujahideen, and we can come and we can help and we can defend Saudi Arabia. What does the Saudi Arabia government choose? What do?
They choose the U.S.
To be their
Defender.
support. You've got that alignment, that agreement, or that agreement. I'm trying to think of a different word. This relationship with the United States. So they say thanks, but no thanks. We'll take the United States and have them help us. So in comes Bush, the United States, Bush Senior, the United States Desert Storm, and that enrages bin Laden to have now U.S. troops on Islamic soil. So when you get to 1996, Osama bin Laden declares war on the United States. He also does that in 1988 as well. I'm sorry, 98. He writes to what they call a fatwa, which is a religious law. They actually have to go to get permission and to be able to permission from the religious sector of this to do this. He writes this fatwa and declares war on the United States. Going into the 2001, you see the rise of the Taliban. And then we see 9/11, the World Trade Center, where they hit the heart of the economy of the United States, looking to do damage. But one thing we didn't cover down here is when it comes to the first and second woe, what methodology are we using when it comes to the three woes?
First woe plus second woe equals the third.
Right. Yeah.
Triple application.
Yeah. And the first woe, what did the first woe do?
It hurts men
Mhm.
or Eastern Rome.
And then what's it do?
Kills.
Kills. Okay, so we're gonna see the hurt and the kill in our history then. So the best that I understand it, you mark the hurt at 9/11, and then we're gonna mark the kill down the line, which we won't go into yet, down the line. Okay, so 9/11 happens, and bin Laden is in Afghanistan, and the United States invades Afghanistan. Don't know any significance of it other than, as of yet, what I did find in my studies, that it was on October 7th, 2001, that United States goes and invades Afghanistan, and they're looking for bin Laden. Bin Laden flees to Pakistan, and Zarqawi, who was there, also flees, but he flees to Iraq. Okay, so at this time in here, early 2001, or I'm sorry, late 2001, bin Laden flees to Pakistan, and Zarqawi flees to Iraq. And as you progress through, you come to 2003, and the United States wants to invade Iraq, and they need an excuse to invade Iraq. They send Colin Powell to the UN, and what does Colin Powell need to do? They want to just, this war on terror. They want to invade Iraq. What does Colin Powell need to do?
Does he connect bin Laden with al-Zarqawi?
That's what he wants
So
to do.
they have a
because-
reason to
Yeah, because
invade.
Zarqawi went to Iraq, and they know that, and so they want to connect bin Laden to Iraq, and they do that by using Zarqawi. So remember that they're not in agreement with they knew of each other, but they were not necessarily in agreement of how things ought to operate. But they want to make this connection, and so they invade Iraq. And when they invade and topple Saddam Hussein, then they fire the Iraqi army. If anybody remembers that, they fire the Iraqi army. So the Iraqi army is mostly Sunni. And so if you're in this great army, and suddenly now you're out of a job. What are you gonna do? So in 2004, we see Zarqawi establishes, there's an agreement that does come between him and Al-Qaeda, and they form Al-Qaeda in Iraq. So where are these soldiers going to go now? They're going to go join Al-Qaeda in Iraq. So that's 2004. Now you come to 2011 with the Syrian war, beginning with Arab Spring. Revolution begins in Syria, and it becomes a 10-year proxy war between the King of the North and the King of the South. So back in here, you had the same thing here, a proxy war, when it comes to the King of the North and the King of the South, and it's being fought in the Middle East. You've got this proxy war here, this 10-year proxy war, fighting between the King of the North and the King of the South, and in Syria. So Arab Spring is the beginning of it. You have ISIS. I don't know how you would say that because there were many forms of it. You got Al-Qaeda in Iraq, then it progresses to Islamic State of Iraq. So it goes from Al-Qaeda in Iraq to Islamic State. So they're declaring it an Islamic State in Iraq. Then you come to 2014, which is we understand this is our first Sunday law here on our line. You have the Caliphate established. And this is, I don't know if I have the spelling right on this, but the siege of Kaban. Okay. And then in 2015, there's a little bit of turn to where in the battle, and they begin to come down in power and come down in strength. And there's several videos you can watch online to see this, where they actually do the maps where they spread Al-Qaeda from Al-Qaeda to Iraq, in Iraq to Al-Qaeda. Let's see, Al-Qaeda in Iraq to Islamic State in Iraq. And then when they go into Syria, the map grows and they're gaining more territory. They become Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. So that's the growth of coming to ISIS, getting to the point of ISIS. And we didn't start out with where he is, but Baghdadi takes over the leadership. We see Zarqawi. I don't remember what year Zarqawi is killed. I think it's 2006. Zarqawi is killed. Baghdadi then takes over, and Baghdadi also then is killed. I don't remember if it's 2019. I think it is 2019. He's killed, and they begin to lose all their land, and there's this downhill slide. And then in 2020, I hope I have this one right, marks the restraint that comes on. But that's then ending. Now, this did not end Iraq. If you can go look and research, you'll see ISIS didn't end ISIS entirely. What you have is, every time we can use the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where Israeli thinks that they can take out Hamas and completely destroy them. And what we've seen is that you don't ever really destroy. What happens when you go after these radical Islamic extremists? What happens when you go after to defeat them?
Do you mean like if you put them in jail or if you persecute them? Like
Yeah.
more of them spring up. It
Get
doesn't.
more of them spring up. So they're continuing to spread and they're continuing to work. So they continue that process. So of rising up. So it kind of brings more radicals to rise up. And and then from 2021, you see the end of that 10-year proxy war. And back through the lines of Elder Tess, way back when, you have a win for the King of the South, a loss. That was at 2019. Was that when it was 2019 Heraclea? I might have it mixed up. But here you have defeat of the King of the South. We see this is where the King of the South receives its deadly wound, and a victory for the King of the North. We come to 2023, our history, and we know we're in this agitation here. And then you see the Hamas attack Israel, and then Israel is now invaded Palestine. So this battle here, the best that I understand it thus far, and could be wrong, is that it's not about looking at literal Israel. It's about understanding what happens when a nation goes after these radicals, is that they just wind up spreading. So what we do know, going by the phrase Ellen White uses, talking about the angry horse, that the angry horse is seeking to break loose. So we know that there's a restraint placed, and a hold placed on Islam. And how long is that? How long is that hold for? What is the purpose of that hold and that restraint on Islam?
Give God's people a chance to, get a message for that time and prepare.
There's a specific phrase she uses.
Be sealed.
To what?
Is it be sealed?
To be sealed. Is that what you said? Yeah. Yeah. Hold until the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads. So there's this hold going on till the servants, but the angry horse is still there and continuing along the line to get angrier as we move forward. So I feel like I went through that a lot faster than I did Wednesday night. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. You have I marked it down there, the seventh trumpet beginning in 1844. So we're living in this history of the seventh trumpet. And that's where I have for now. But I feel like I really went through that way fast.
Yeah, Elaine, thank you for the wonderful review. Could you go through that history before the 1831, the 10-year, 1841, that, the Wahhabi War? Could you go through that? Yeah, just
Yeah,
trace back.
Yeah, the Wahhabi War was actually earlier here, 1811 to 1818. So, and I do that to show, just when it comes to a line of progression, you can trace Islam through that whole history. And so in 1811 to 1818, they're not happy with these religious extremists, and the Ottoman Empire wants to get rid of this extremism. And and the other thing you have going on in here, and I don't remember, this one's not in my memory bank right now, but you have in this history the slave trade going on. And this is all taking place, and who's going to control that slave trade as well. So that's kind of a backdrop to what goes into this. And anyway, so they wanted to take out this religious extremist. And it's the Pasha of Egypt's son that actually goes and does that. So it's the Wahhabi Ottoman War, where the Pasha of Egypt, or his son, which is a vassal of the Ottoman Empire, is going to defeat the Wahhabis in this history here. Then when you get to the Greek War of Independence, it's Greece fighting for their independence from the Ottoman Empire. And while they're fighting for their independence, you have the Sultan, the Ottoman Empire, offer territory reward to the Pasha of Egypt to come help him in this battle. Okay, so that leads to when the Egyptian Ottoman agreement there in that, or participation in that. I know there's a word that I'm missing that fits in that. Well, alliance, that's the word I'm looking for. Alliance that they come into to help fight against this Greek independence. But three great powers, which I believe were Britain, France, and Russia, defeat the Ottoman Egyptian army at this particular Battle of Navarino. And then eventually that paves the way for Greek independence from the Ottoman Empire. So you see the Ottoman Empire falling, shrinking more and more along the line. But because the Sultan had promised territory to the Pasha of Egypt, but then did not pay him what he said he would pay him, they come into battle. So 1831 to 1833, there's a series of battles that take place between the Pasha of Egypt and Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. So they battle between 1831 to 1833. There's a break in between, and then they battle between 1839 and 1841. And it's in 1840, the Second Egyptian Ottoman War, where you then see the four great powers, Prussia, Russia, Britain, and France, who now defeat, and the Sultan then surrenders to those four great powers, they defeat the Ottoman Empire. So we see a restraint of Islam. What I haven't figured out or looked at entirely yet is because we do know that Ellen White says that Jesus could have come back, and we know based on the 2520 when that would be. So had Jesus come back, there would have had to have been something involving Islam here, if they are the third woe and they're the ones that come in and destroy. So I haven't looked at that, but that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. Whether you call that a failure on Islam, I think I've heard it use that word, but there's a failure on Islam's part, but that leads the way then to come into our history. I hope that kind of,
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Now,
Okay.
can we compare that with the Syrian war in 2011 to 2021? What led to it? Just connect it. Yeah.
haven't done application on any of that, where to connect it, other than just look at the two, how they do parallel. But going through this history, I'm sure somebody could take this history and you know that it's squeezed into this area here and see this battle from 79 to 89, the Gulf War, Bin Laden declaring war. The one thing that I will point out, and I think I'm out of time, thought it was earlier than it's, I am out of time, aren't I? Just about. I can't read that clock. What time do we have?
10:22 our time.
You're
Okay.
okay.
I'm okay, okay. What time do you usually end?
Usually between an hour and a half study.
Okay. Okay, so I think we're right about there. I don't know, but I do think you could probably, somebody could probably take it apart and look at all this that takes place in here and look at it in here. I had a point I was just gonna say and I lost my train of thought. Oh, I know what I was gonna say, is one thing that I saw, and I don't know how this fits, but in the reading that I've been doing on these histories, and the difference between Al-Qaeda and Iraq, and I don't know what significance it is, but when it came to Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, he had a global purpose and to unite all Muslims to destroy the infidels, to destroy the Christians, destroy particularly the United States. Whereas when you get into the period of ISIS, they've got this war going on here, and it's a who knows what kind of war is going on there with ISIS. What are they fighting for, against?
Well, they want more global domination. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but
ISIS?
yeah.
They're more local, not
They're more
global.
local.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were more local and fighting sectarian war, Shia, Sunni, that kind of battle. So I don't know where that leads us to here. But what I do know is that bin Laden, and especially in 2002, you can find, if you search for it, you can find the letter that he wrote to the United States in 2002. So we saw that he declared war on the United States in 1996. He writes another fatwa in 1998, saying, reiterating, and probably other stuff in it. But then in 2002, he writes this letter that gets published in the Guardian, and his listing all his grievances towards the West. If you find it, there's a whole list of his grievances against the West, against Israel, against how the West supports Israel, and all the United States coming in and trying to spread democracy and set up puppet leaders in place, and then spread their Western views on all this Muslim territory. And so he's global and wanting to unite all Muslims to destroy the West. Whereas when it comes to Zarqawi, one of the points that Elder Chess made, Zarqawi, you've got bin Laden, who is very wealthy and very educated, and Zarqawi was more of a street thug, poor and uneducated. He's actually seeking this sectarian war. So in my thoughts, I don't know if it's right, in my thoughts, it's going to take somebody like bin Laden to do what comes forward, but we'll see that as we proceed through the line. I don't have answers to that, but there was that difference of one of them being ISIS being more sectarian and regional versus Al Qaeda and Bin Laden with this global purpose of uniting Muslims. So that is all I have. And if anybody has any thoughts they want to add,
Yeah, Elaine.
yeah.
Hi, thanks for the study. So one thing that you had said that 2019 was Heraclea. It was actually 2018
Oh,
was
thank you.
Heraclea,
Yeah, I've been a long
and
time.
2019 was Raphia.
Got it. Thank you. That's right. Should have remembered about you. I told you I'm out of my comfort zone. But thank you. A whole nother factor in here to look at as we've come to 2016 and Donald Trump and his relationship with the Saudis too. So where we go forward on that.
Yeah.
But hopefully there's at least good enough history to help stir our minds with the angry horse and the work of the role of the angry horse. The thing that I find interesting is that if you go back here to 1989, we get a message, the movement rises up 1989, this message that the Sunday law is imminent, but you don't know what the Sunday law is. But also in Adventism, you've got all this history that has already been established on the woes, and you don't even know what the role of Islam is. So we get our understanding in here on the Sunday law and coming in to understand equality and radical feminism. And also though, because you have the sin that fills the cup, but then you have the punisher that's going to do the punishing. And neither one did we know and have had to come to understand that. So I don't know if that helps at all, but anyways, I appreciate your time. It was nice being here. Like I said, outside my comfort zone. But
Elaine,
yeah,
I just have a question. So do you happen to know, because I don't, where did Al Qaeda get its start? We
Oh.
talked about Al Qaeda. Where did Al Qaeda, when did it come into existence?
In 1988 is where Elder Tess marked it, because I haven't researched this one, but she gave it, so I was fine with that, but I just haven't looked into that history. And I'm sure there's more details that can be dug out, but the base is what it's called, the base. And that was the beginning. That was 1988 when Al Qaeda begins to be formed.
And which studies of Elder Tess's can you
Yep.
point us?
This particular one, that line, the rest of it is from other studies that I've been working on. But that particular line was, and I don't remember, I think it's 2020, but it's called Information Streams and Wahhabism. 2020, early 2020, I think.
Got it.
It's in the book, The Mind of the Islamic State, also, page 15, 1988. Bin Laden created in Afghanistan an organization called Al Qaeda.
Good. 2020, it might have been 2021 or something. I might have the year wrong but if you look up Elder Tess in that title, you'll find it. I might
It's
have to-
September 11th, 2021.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That is actually true. Now that I should have remembered that. I should have remembered that because it was 9/11 when she did it. That's right. Well, thank you very much for having me. And appreciate the time.
Thank
and
you,
all.
Elaine.
Yeah,
Elaine, it was very good.
good.